All right, guys, here we are. We are back getting ready to cover episodes 4 and 5 of The Acolyte, going over everything that they're continuously doing wrong in terms of writing, directing, presentation. Now, I know some of you wondering why are we doing episode 4 and 5 together? Why didn't I do episode 4 last week? Trust me, that was the plan, but the problem was I got really sick, like really sick. High fever, bed rest, all of that. So even when I started trying to get a little bit better, I thought maybe I could try to like squeeze the episode out. Failed attempt. It was terrible. So yeah. So by the time I was feeling better, it was pretty much too late. The episode 5 was getting ready to drop. So I was like, all right, let's let the episode play and we'll just do them both together. Plus, I guess it kind of works out because these two episodes are kind of like a two-parter for each other and everything. So, yeah. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get on into it. Of course, it's going to be spoilers. Heavy spoilers if you haven't seen these episodes already. I don't know if you actually want to see these episodes, but hey, if you want to hear what went wrong, just stay tuned. Let's get into it. All right, so first, let's go ahead and just talk about the elephant in the room, everything that people were really talking about as far as last week, which is the cameo of Ki-Adi-Mundi among a bunch of random Jedis and Masters, even though this is like 40 years before he's supposed to be born in the canon. Well, I guess the new canon has extended the life of his entire species now, but yeah, plenty of people have complained about this, plenty of people have talked about this, gone in extensive detail on why this is a bad move overall. So I'm not really going to get into that. I'm just highlighting that, yes, I know. So when I skip over this, you guys are like, well, what about the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi thing? Yeah, I know about it, all right? But I think everybody else has talked about this more than enough. So let's move on to the other things, everything else that's wrong with episode 4. All right, so to kick the episode off, things begin with this really confusing moment, I should say. You see, we start off with a bunch of what seems to be younglings training in a group session, except Jackie is in the group, which is very strange because what do we classify her as? Is she a youngling, a Padawan, a Jedi Knight? Because they seem to be just shoving her in whatever role just fits the scene. Here she is training with wooden sticks, and yet in the previous episode she's doing Padawan work. So is she a youngling or a Padawan? Does she have a master or doesn't she? I haven't seen her actually speak to a direct master as her master. Sort of with a master soul, but not too much. So the real question is, what's her position? Is she just here to just fill whatever space? It's odd. Like, they're just mixing her up. It makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. However, I will say, apart from my frustrations with how they're kind of throwing this character around, I will say I do like the character or the actor portraying this character because she's doing a great job with delivering her lines and her performance as an actor. The writing part of it, of course, is terrible because they're just throwing her wherever, whenever. But as far as the actual actor goes, you know, I would wish that I would get to see more of her, but unfortunately, because of spoilers, yeah, we'll see. Next up, we get a quick scene of May and Quemar out in the woods, and obviously Quemar's throwing strong hints that, you know, he's the Sith, of course. They made it so obvious because dude's there to handle everything, and yet at the same time, he's weak, yet he's strong. He stumbles around, yet he knows exactly what to do, when to do it. They made it way too obvious. Way too obvious. And then we get to the Jedi's meeting with Ki-Adi-Mundi and friends, young Ki-Adi-Mundi. So crazy. But his existence here is not even the only thing that's wrong with this entire situation. So in this scene, this group of Jedi are getting together to discuss the issue with May and the Jedi that she's killed. And even though in the previous episode, previous before that, because we had the flashback episode, of course, but last time we saw Soul, he was trying to get ahead of May and knew exactly where she was going, but they called him back for this meeting. Why? I don't know. I guess they just needed this scene to happen, right? And so we get into this scene, and we get two things that are really wrong with this. Okay, so first, they choose to not tell the Jedi Council. And then their reasoning for not telling them. Okay, so their reasoning for not telling the Jedi Council, the High Council, about this situation is because they're worried that they'll end up telling the Senate, and that would cause more problems for the Order overall. Okay, so first of all, if there was Jedi being murdered, the Council would have known at the beginning, like in the very first episode. Them not knowing and them still not knowing, terrible writing in terms of the lore. You know, that's your excuse. You're gonna lean on that excuse for, you know, a Sith appearing, but them still not knowing about them for another 100 years or whatever. That's a very, very terrible excuse. And it's both terrible on the lore side and on the storytelling side, because for one, you're doing this obviously to avoid having to show us the actual council, right? So we're not going to get to see Yoda or anyone else because you're basically going out of your way not to show the actual Jedi Council, which is terrible because there's missed opportunities here. There's missed opportunities because, of course, this is 100 years in the past. There's a certain member of the Jedi Council that have not even been born yet. And so those seats are supposed to be filled with the living members of this particular era. Now we won't get to see them at all. And I think that really sucks. This was a great opportunity to try and give the fans something that they would have wanted. And of course, the Acolyte is not here to give anybody what they want, unfortunately. And then again, it goes against the Jedi Code. All of the Jedi in this room should have been kicked out behind not telling the Council about a Jedi killer who's going around killing masters. So that makes no sense whatsoever. And then on top of all of this happening, if two Jedi Masters have died, how come the Council doesn't know already in terms of them just sensing it? How come Yoda hasn't sensed that two prominent Masters have passed away? All in all, this scene was absolutely atrocious to watch. This went against lore, writing, the direction, just terrible, terrible. And then from there, we get into a good chunk of the episode being a whole lot of walking and a whole lot of talking, where Quimar is continuously giving the audience blatant hints that he is the Sith in this situation by being way too obvious, while the Jedi try to catch up with them so that they can save our Wookiee Jedi. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but since when do Jedi hide out from the actual temple, the actual Jedi Order? Because nobody knows where this guy actually lives at. How come the Jedi Council, of course the Jedi Council is being kept in the dark here, right? But how come the Jedi Order, nobody knows where this guy lives at? You would think that he would be in some kind of communication with them since he's up at this point alive and well, right? You've seen him in a couple of episodes. Didn't look like there was anything wrong with him up until that point. So why? Why is it they don't know where he lives? Again, terrible writing just for the sake of pushing an episode further and filling time. That's pretty much what this boils down to. Because, you know, they don't label him as an exile. They don't make him some kind of traitor or that he did something wrong. They're just like, oh yeah, he got stationed here and kind of went AWOL. And nobody went looking for him until now. But then again, not much is making sense in this episode, because right here, as they're getting ready, as they're just about to get ready to start walking the trail to try and find May before it's too late, Yord over here decides he wants to pressure Osha to hand over her stun blaster because she's just a civilian right now. And so she should not be armed. He says that, yet 5 minutes later, he confesses to her that he's worried for her safety while they're actually walking this trail. So if you're worried for her safety, why'd you take away her, or want to take away her one weapon, her only means of self-defense? From there, both groups eventually go into the thicker and darker part of the forest, where our group of Jedi ends up going into this weird little place where it's obvious these little insect stacks are just hanging on these trees, even though they're walking past them confused like they don't know what they are, even though they made blatantly obvious that there's some kind of bug-like creatures. But of course they'll figure out that these are giant bugs because Osha just has to end up waking one of them up, right? A nice little foreshadowing for what we might see further on in the episode or in the next episode. And Soul ends up taking it out by taking it down with his lightsaber, using his lightsaber to attract it, showing that they're attracted to light. They're basically giant moth bugs. The only part about that I didn't like was the fact that right after he cut it, you had Jedi in the back going, it went straight for the saber. It's attracted to light. Like, yeah, that was obvious. Thank you for speaking directly to the audience. Like, come on now. Better dialogue, please. Because so far, the best dialogue has been coming from our Padawan youngling, possibly knight, I don't know at this point, because they just have her feeling every role at once. And then halfway through their little adventure through the forest, May decides she doesn't want to be an acolyte anymore. So she sets up Quimar, catches him in a very simple trap, and decides she's going to turn herself into the Jedi and pay for her crimes. All because now her sister is alive. So now that changes everything. So she was really just on this mission to get revenge for her sister that she herself tried to burn alive, right? And then here we are with just more terrible dialogue. You see, the Jedi hired a little gopher tracker guy since they don't know where the Wookiee is at. And they have to find him. So they're using a tracker to find him. And that tracker ditches them for a little bit. And so they have Yord come over here and step right in front of the camera and just spit nonsense. We need a tracker to find our tracker, and a tracker to find that tracker, and a tracker for that tracker. Really? Really? Who thought that was good dialogue? I don't know. I'm sorry, that one just bugged me. But then our little gopher tracker ends up spotting May approaching the Wookiee's house and sends off an alarm bell for everybody to follow. And May makes it to the Wookiee to turn herself into the Wookiee, only to find that the Wookiee has already been killed. Big old lightsaber slash across its chest. Now, again, what's wrong with this one is that we saw the Wookiee at the beginning of this episode cooking food. So it makes a weird timeline as to when he died, because if you're going to say that Quimar, because he's obviously the Jedi, the Sith at this point, right? If you're going to say that Quimar killed him, so you mean that Quimar cut the rope, ran past everybody, slashed him, killed him, and then ran back and got ready for a big surprise. You can't say that he killed him before leaving and bringing her there, because we saw him alive in the beginning. And if he was able to do that, that means that this Wookiee was one of the weakest Jedi ever, because he wasn't even able to put up a fight. Just got slashed and that was it. So many unanswered questions behind this happening. Literally they just did not want to animate a fight with a Wookiee Jedi. That's pretty much what it was. It was like, no, you don't get a Wookiee Jedi action, that lightsaber fight. No, you don't get that. You don't get that. He's dead. Don't care how you guys think it might have happened. He's just dead. And then so we have all the Jedi outside of the Wookiee's house, and May is inside, obviously looking guilty because the Wookiee Jedi is now dead. They don't know he's dead yet, but they're trying to get May to come out. But she's afraid to because of how bad everything is making her look. Even though, you know, she was supposed to be turning herself in. That would have been a good time to just walk out and say, I give up. I turn myself in. But no, she stays hidden. And then we get the great Mary Poppins reveal. Oh man, that was one of the saddest little drops. First of all, I know some people saw that and was complaining, oh, Sith fly now. I'm sorry, like, I'm complaining too, but it's the wrong kind of complaint as far as I'm seeing. This wasn't flying, this was sadly floating. You should have given this guy an umbrella. Like Sith Poppins, Darth Mary Poppins at this point, right? There was nothing menacing about that at all. Nothing. You think about all of the entrances that other Sith have done that have looked badass. This one was terrible. Oh man, just terrible. And here we are with the menacing Darth Teeth, Darth Smiley. That weird mask. Just ugh. And here we go with more stuff that makes no sense. The Sith has walked right up in Osha's face, whips out his lightsaber, and doesn't stab her with it. does not stab her with it. Now you would think that would be his first move, considering he, Sith tried to destroy people's attachments to plunge them further into the darkness, right? This would have been a great opportunity to try to push May further to the dark side by stabbing Osha. At least that would make sense in any normal Star Wars scenario, but no. He's going to whip out his lightsaber right in her face and then just force push her away. That's pretty much what he does. And then after he pushes Osha away, all the Jedi try to rush him, and he delivers a very casual force push that blows all of them away. So they power scaled him to be way above this entire group, which, considering the feats that we've already seen Sol do, it makes very little sense. Not to mention, this is something that looks like it should be on like Sidious's level, and Sidious is supposed to be the culmination of the Sith, so why are we making this guy this strong? But don't worry, we got to cover the next episode, and we'll see just how his power fluctuates throughout the whole thing. All right, so this is how the episode ends. It cuts the credits like this. That's how that was done. Again, terrible in terms of the direction, writing, and how they were doing it. And so now we got to get into episode 5. Now, episode 5 kicks off with Osha waking up after being thrown across the forest by our Sith. Osha wakes up, composes herself, and then sees the Sith absolutely bodying the other Jedi. He is tearing them up. And I gotta say, this 5th episode, because of the action, it makes its way to being the best episode in this series so far. Only in this series. I'm only comparing it to the previous episodes because this is still the worst Star Wars show that I've seen thus far. But the action here is actually pretty decent. Although there are some things within the action in terms of storytelling through action that's quite terrible, the action itself was decent. I'll give it that much. But after the initial action is over, we get to some ridiculous stuff because now we have Osha running from the Sith, and he throws his lightsaber to try and chop her in half. If your intent was to kill her, how come you didn't do so when you walked up to her at the end of the previous episode? Why'd you first push her away only to try and kill her now? Open opportunity. You could have just ended it right there. But no, we had to drag it out. We got to drag it out because we need more fighting to happen. So here we go. Sol comes to the rescue, Master Sol, and Master Sol now has to fight the Sith one-on-one. Sol tells Yord to grab Osha and get away while he does battle with the Sith. May tries to take the Wookiee Jedi's lightsaber and get out of town, rightfully so, and gets interrupted when Jackie jumps in and drop kicks her. And then Jackie actually manages to wrestle May down and handcuff her, which a good feat on her part, but speaks to how everybody else was being absolute failures for the fact that she kept slipping through their fingers. But it took Jackie, the MVP, youngling, Jedi, Knight, Padawan, all the above. She fits every role. It took her to do it. But unfortunately, things have to get drug out through this episode because Sol loses the initial duel, gets kicked down, dazed, stunned, and the Sith does not capitalize on it. He leaves him there instead of trying to kill him. This should have been it for Sol with him falling to the ground like this. The Sith should have been able to just lights him, be done with it. But no, we have to drag it on. So he gets knocked down, dazed, disoriented, and when he comes to, the Sith is gone. But apparently he had a reason for leaving Sol there because he just had to run back to fight our youngling Padawan. Like, wait, what? But that's what happens. He rushes at her full speed. And I guess this is supposed to be like, oh, he's trying to get revenge on May for betraying him, apparently. But still, you had the final Jedi Master in the group on the ground, and you could have finished him off right there. But you left him for no reason at all. Like I said, weird things just to keep pushing the show forward. But things get even stranger right here because now we have him going full force against Jackie, and Jackie is holding her own. So let me get this straight. This dude completely bodied like 4 or 5 other knights and masters all at once. And then Jackie, the little Padawan, the one who in the previous episode was doing youngling training, is now holding her own in this 1v1 duel. I guess the master should have went to that Padawan training, right? I guess fundamentals, the basics, you got to make sure you keep up with that. That's what they messed them up. They forgot about their fundamentals. They forgot the youngling fundamentals, and that's why they got bodied. Oh man. But yes, Jackie manages to hold her own against him until he manages to break her lightsaber, or one of them, and then leaves again. He does a lot of beating his opponents and then leaving them just to chase after somebody else, all for the sake of filling episode time. That's pretty much all this is, just filling episode time, because there's certain characters that he's killing right off the bat and certain characters he's letting live for absolutely no reason at all. Like, why are we dancing around here? Oh yeah, we have to fill the time slot for the episode, that's why. And then after that, Darth Smiley catches up with May and goes to get his revenge for her betrayal by slashing her handcuffs free. He could have slashed at any other wild angle and took her hands off. He could have leaned in just a little bit further and slashed her across the chest. He could have ended her in so many ways, but no. He's gonna swing and perfectly cut off her handcuffs. And these are Star Wars handcuffs. There's no chain in the middle for any kind of leeway. It's really like this. And yet he perfectly swings right in between her hands to cut her handcuffs off and free her without hurting her whatsoever, even though his intention was to kill her. Yeah, okay. But before he can bring his blade up to do his actual killing blow, Soul Force pulls him back, and Soul and Jackie go 2-on-1 against him. Now we're back in the realm of slightly making sense, because now we have a fight against a master and the Sith while his Padawan is backing him up. So now we're back into sort of common sense territory to how fights normally go down, but still it's kind of weird because we're doing this weird like cat and mouse back and forth thing where May runs away, he chases her, almost kills her, and then Jackie is saving her from the killing strikes. Like, Jackie should be, like, she should have been promoted by now. Why is she still doing youngling training? Well, I guess the youngling fundamentals is what's really keeping her alive right now, right? So youngling stuff, Padawan stuff, now she's like a good old Jedi Knight really jumping in the mix and doing her thing. Like, she could do it all. She could really do it all. Meanwhile, Soul force pulled him the first time, but wasn't able to force pull him the second time. The fluctuations of skill going everywhere. Everybody is strong when they need to be. Everybody is weak when they need to be. And it's when they need to be, it's whenever the writers say so. And then Osha decides that no, she's not going to run away. She's going to go and help. And she decides to use the bugs from the previous episode by flashing a light at them and getting them to chase her. But unfortunately, her plan is a little too late because Jackie, the best thing in this show thus far, gets Swiss cheesed. He stabs her so many times. I guess this was like in retaliation to people's complaints about a single stab no longer killing people. So they're like, well, this will kill people. 3 stabs. They did her brutal. As far as choreography goes, this scene was pretty badass, but they killed off the best character in the show thus far. The only, in my opinion. Oh man. R.I.P. Jackie. And from here we get the reveal. It was Quemar the whole time, even though we all knew it was Quemar the whole time because you guys did a very terrible job of keeping his identity a secret from the viewers. It's so bad, I don't know how the characters didn't pick up on it. It was so obvious. And after killing Jackie, Soul tries to scold him. She was a child. And it's funny because just like we're thinking, why are you bringing a youngling Padawan on this mission? He brings it up here like, you brought her here. Like, Yeah, you brought her here. This was not the mission that you should have brought her on. Seriously. And I don't know why it was written that way. The youngling Padawan who's still training with wooden sticks is going to be the one to come out here. Not only is she going to be the one to come out here, but she's going to do a better job than the other knights and masters. She's going to 1v1 the Sith after he bodied like 4 or 5 other Jedi masters. Oh, man. Okay. But that, and it turns out that it's Quimar that has the logic here. You brought her here. Why'd you bring her here out of all of this? And then we get to the absolute worst part of this entire episode. Quimar gets a hold of May, holds his lightsaber up to her head as a hostage, forcing Soul to throw his lightsaber away. All of that is fine. Up until Soul asks him, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I have no name. But if you're gonna call me anything, I guess it would be Sith." There's so many things wrong with that. So many things wrong with that. First of all, if you are Sith, this will only make sense if he was a poser. Because this goes completely against the rule of 2, which is supposed to be in effect right now. And they don't reveal themselves openly, intentionally, until Darth Maul shows up in Phantom Menace. Up until then, remember, it was all about, we'll finally reveal ourselves. Up until then, the rule of 2 Sith kept themselves completely hidden. So why is this dude proclaiming himself Sith? Whether he is or not. Could have said, "Oh, I'm a dark force user," or "I'm a force user looking for freedom," or anything other than calling yourself a Sith. By throwing that out there, nobody asked you if you were Sith. Nobody here was thinking that you were Sith, but he just comes out and says it. Completely breaks the rule of 2. He had already kind of broken it by attacking them instead of hiding away. He could have easily left after killing the Wookiee. But no, he decides he's going to come and kill everybody. But now he's admitted he's a Sith after they've seen his face. Literally, the only way to save this is if every character on here dies now. That's literally the only way to save it. Otherwise, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Ugh. And then we get another kind of badass moment. That's the one thing about this episode that's so... we get these little badass moments. Then we get these moments that throws everything off. Because after getting that very terrible reveal where he admits he's a Sith, Yord comes in, grabs his helmet, which he realizes is made of cortosis, and uses his helmet so that they both end up shutting down each other's lightsabers. That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good going into the lore because for those of you who don't know, if you don't know, cortosis is one of the rare metals that can resist a lightsaber strike, but cortosis specifically will cause a lightsaber to temporarily short out once it makes contact with the blade, which is pretty much why their blades were going out while they were fighting him. So that part, throwing something with a little bit of lore in there was good, but not enough good to justify the entire episode. So this exchange was pretty good. You gotta admit that. Unfortunately, Yord loses the scuffle and gets his neck snapped. And that's the end of Yord. Oh man. So the most useful and the most useless characters get bodied all within 5 minutes of each other. Which is on par for fighting against a Sith, but again, why did he admit he was a Sith, right? And then we get into another weird moment because Soul rushes Quimar and they end up fist fighting. Now, Quimar's reason for fist fighting makes sense. His lightsaber got shorted out, so he needs to wait until it comes back to power. But Soul only threw his lightsaber away. It didn't get shorted out, so how come he didn't grab his lightsaber? But you got to give it to Soul. He gives him one hell of a beating in this moment, showing that he was better with bare hands than he was with his lightsaber. Then after delivering that beating, he goes for his lightsaber and tries to execute him on the spot, only for Osha to stop him. But it gets even stranger because Osha essentially stopped Soul from killing Quimar just so she can throw that light on him to attract the bugs so that the bugs can try to kill Quimar. Either way, you're trying to kill him, so does it matter if you're using a horde of bugs or a lightsaber when you're the one trying to cause the death to happen? Like, little bitty semantics. It doesn't make it better because you sick bugs on him. Trying to kill him is still trying to kill him, period. And so the bugs end up carrying him off so that they can feast on him. And that's going to be the end of Quimar. Or is it? And then we get to a weird conversation where Osha questions Soul. Oh, the evil Sith who tried to murder us just said I shouldn't trust you. Why did he say that? I don't know. Psychological warfare, maybe? It's funny how you're so quick to trust the villains in here. It's crazy. And then Soul's abilities have to get nerfed again because once again, he completely does not see it coming when May force pulls Osha's blaster into her hand and then shoots Soul with the stun blaster. It all happened. The blaster was right next to him, and yet he does not see it coming. What's even worse about this was that she got hit with the stun blaster first and was out for just a couple of minutes, while Soul isn't going to get up until a couple of scenes later once it becomes convenient. The Jedi Master is less resistant to stun blasters than the Acolyte that he slapped around a couple episodes ago. Yeah, that makes sense. And then the twins finally reunite and May tries to get Osha to join her, but Osha refuses to join her and decides to try and arrest her, even though she doesn't have any actual means to arrest her, which I thought was pretty funny. Because obviously the person who's been training to kill Jedi for the past 16 years completely reverses her little grapple technique and puts her in her own little hold real quick. So it's like, wait, why are we even trying this? Why are we doing this? And then after a very, very, very short scuffle, May force pushes Osha and knocks her out, showing that no, Osha still can't use the Force, even though she was supposed to be born special with Force abilities. Nope, she still just can't use it, even though she could as a kid. Like, what happened? She can't use it at all. Oh man, it's so sad what they're doing here. Makes no sense. But then they also throw a whole little cryptic thing where they're arguing about their past, and May's like, oh, they brainwashed you. And if that entire flashback episode was nothing but a brainwashed fever dream, it's going to be so dumb. Because in no way was it presented as anything else but the backstory. So if that's what if they turn the backstory episode into a fever dream, I'm going to be so annoyed. Even more so annoyed than I am now. And then after knocking her out, May decides to assume Osha's identity and get close to Soul by cutting her hair to match her length. Now that kind of smart until you realize she used a lightsaber, so the tips of all of those braids are now singed. So I guess anybody else with decent eyesight will be able to tell that there's something wrong here, but I guess Soul's just a little bit too stressed about everything that happened, right? He's not going to be able to notice. Then of course, Darth Quimar, formerly known as Darth Smiley over here, obviously survives the bug attack and ends up, you know, going after them again. So yeah, should have just killed him the way they were going to do in the beginning, but of course we got to fill 3 more episodes, so he can't die quite yet. We got to drag it out just a little bit more. In the end, Soul is completely confused and fooled by the fact that May is now pretending to be Osha. Like, Jedi Master, no reading the mind, no sensing a different vibe or energy or life force or anything. I know that they're twins, but one has been steeped in the darkness and the other one was trained by you in the light. So the fact that they're physically identical should mean nothing, but nope. Not for the sake of the end of this episode. We have to push it a little bit further, so he's not going to be able to tell the difference, even though he should. And on top of that, her braids should still be singed from her lightsaber, but now they're magically not. Okay. And now Quimar has found Osha and can easily tell that this is Osha by the way she's been stripped of her uniform and is laying there knocked out. But instead of killing her like he was intending to do earlier, he covers her up. and decides that he has other plans for her. So he can't decide. He keeps on going back and forth between wanting to kill her and not wanting to kill her, basically. Just, what do I feel like doing right now? But yeah, that's how this two-parter ends right here. The good old twin switcheroo. All right. Once again. Now, again, for episode 5, I will say that this had good action in it. Decent action. The storytelling behind the action was still garbage. Some of the moments in the action were very weird, including Jackie taking on the Sith in a 1v1 and holding her own. You know, whether or not the fact that he bodied 5 masters and then she 1v1 him, that makes no sense. No sense at all, you know? And I like the fierceness they gave her. She was a fearless fighter, yes, but her position in the actual fight should have been way different. But again, I guess, yeah, you need to get that good old youngling training in before you go fight a Sith, right? That good old youngling training will help you get them basics down and you'll be ready for it. But yeah, all in all, the storytelling here is still an absolute mess. They still just say or do whatever just to push the story forward without wanting it to make sense from a directing standpoint, from a writing standpoint, or even just from a Star Wars lore standpoint. It's just all over the place. It's messy. And the only thing about this episode that made it digestible was the good choreography in the fight scenes. We'll have to give it that much. But as far as everything else goes, it's still doing terrible on every other note. So that's it for this. I guess we'll see what happens next week. We have 3 episodes to go in this 8-episode series. We'll see what they do. We'll see if anything makes sense by the end of the day. I can't wait to see if they decide to introduce the actual Sith Master, because if he's out here causing this havoc, that means that most likely there's a bigger master above him, or at least there should be, unless they're gonna do something else that completely disrespects the lore. All right, so I'll be here to check it out and review it next week. Hopefully I don't get sick again, so we don't have to wait. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you're still watching, or if you're still holding on, hoping for something good, or if you're like me, watching just to see what they're getting wrong, or if you've given up on it altogether. Let me know your thoughts about the Acolyte in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys on the next one for my next rant. All right, so until then, take care of yourselves. May the Force be with you. I'm out of here.